Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. And we're in Revelation 21. We did dip into chapter 21 in connection with chapter 20, and they are intimately connected, and chapter divisions are just there for reference, really. Though sometimes they're put in there logically, and this might be a logical point for a new chapter. For certain, because we have a whole new chapter in the history of existence. I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them. And they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. So, one of the things that occurred to me as I read that, we might spend a lot of time on these first few verses, to tell you the truth. So the new heavens and the new earth. Something very distinctive between this and the millennium. And that's why I think there is a millennium. Sometimes I think, I believe that whether amillennial or post-millennial, which are, there's not a lot of, well, amillennial means there's no millennium. Post-millennial means that Jesus returns after the millennium. So what am I talking about? Oh, yeah, after we establish heaven on earth. And, which is, honestly, I think the post-millennial view is a little bit, whatever. I don't agree with it, obviously. I'm not going to get into it now. I didn't really touch on it at all. But the idea that there is some sort of king, the post-millennial view does have a view that there is a kingdom. In the amillennial view, sort of this is the new heavens and the new earth would be sort of at the same time as the coming of Christ, because if there is no millennium. And actually, the truth is, the amillennial view isn't that there's no millennium. It's just that there's no literal millennium as laid out if you read it like a story. You know what I mean? And, and I described the problems I had with that in chapter 20. But also, here I think I have a problem with it, because the nature of this, what it said here happens, as far as the relationship between God and man, does not seem to be the same as it is in the millennium, where we sit down with him in thrones and rule over the inhabitants of the earth. No, now that the habitation of God is with men. There's no tiered, men in carnal bodies versus men who have been raised, as those who have participated in the first resurrection, and those who are still alive, and the dead who have not been raised and not been judged, and everything is still waiting for the ultimate end. On one hand, the fulfillment of the promise of a kingdom on earth with Christ as king, that being fulfilled, and also the final, in giving, I don't know, it's like the final lesson of the world, the millennium, what happens in it. The new heavens and the new earth, there's nothing more to teach. It is now, and it goes to a different state of being. The old things pass away, and in the new heavens and the new earth, at least on the earth, there's no sea. Whatever, maybe it's just something remarkably noticed. There's no sea on earth anymore. And people might, maybe, maybe you love sea creatures, you think it's some terrible thing. I don't know. There's no more dinosaurs. Not now, there's no more dinosaurs. The world changes. And it's going to change again. And God only knows what, it says, the eye hath not seen, the ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the hearts of men that which he has prepared for them. there might be ocean worlds out there in the new heavens for you to, maybe filled with animals if you like animals so much. I don't know. Maybe God likes animals too. He seems to make many of them. So, I don't prejudge. It's like there's going to be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying. So if that extends down to the animal kingdom, which I don't know if it does, because there's something kind of predator prey. If we're entering into kind of this different state of being, maybe everything that has functioned in this world, in this heavens and earth, will not function in that one if there's not going to be death anymore. If it extends down to other things, the whole fundamental nature of reality has to change. It can't be just like this anymore. This will pass away into the past. And it's like, and that is the fate of the world already known. Like, even if we just left this heaven and earth and it just kept going, and we went on to the new heavens and the new earth, let's say it never says he destroys the old one, it just says it passes away. And that term pass away is used for things they wax old and they pass away. And that is what is going to happen to this world. It's going to wax old and pass away. We know this. I mean, that's the predictions, right? Someday the sun will burn out. The stars' lights will wink out. And the world will grind to a halt. And what? I don't know. I don't know exactly what... actually, they're not exactly sure, are they? How the world's going to end. I mean, they call it the cold death, where it just kind of slowly peters out. And then they had thoughts about it becoming... what would you call it? Well, they used to have the idea of the oscillating universe, which is, I don't think anyone holds that in very high regard anymore. The idea that the universe would expand and then it would slow down and collapse. And they don't believe in that anymore because the universe is accelerating. It means things are spreading out faster and faster. Whatever's causing the universe to expand is causing everything to accelerate. At least that's what we observe. That's the observation. Now, our observations are weird because they're really old. I mean, the light from everything that we see supposedly takes years to even get here. And it's interesting to hear what people say about that as they try to figure this out, because I give it all a grain of sand. I mean, as far as being important to me right now in my life, and learning to follow the Lord Jesus, walking in his footsteps, things like age of the earth, all that, and the scientific stuff is interesting, but it shouldn't have any impact. And I think to the degree that we allow it to become a distraction, and Christians start arguing with science, it's foolish, because they focus on that. Our focus shouldn't be on what the genealogies, how many years line up, and then trying to make everything people observe in the outer world conform to that. That shouldn't be our focus at all. We should be looking at Christ and understanding all the details of the things the Spirit teaches in terms of righteousness, that we may conform to that. Because the holy city is coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. When we talked about the woman, now she appears one more time as the holy city. Like I said in that study about the great city, there's like the evil great city, and then there's the holy great city. There is the whore and the virgin bride, and in the dual nature of that symbology couldn't be more clear, and the meaning. The whore is unfaithful to her betrothed, and the virgin bride is faithful. So, the New Jerusalem is coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice from heaven saying, "Behold, the tabernacle." Tabernacle. I remember when I was young. I remember, like, what exactly is a tabernacle? I've never seen a tabernacle, but it means a tent. And I But it means dwelling place. But it's interesting. It's not initially. You gotta understand the Old Testament. Initially, there was no temple. As the people of Israel wandered in the wilderness, they were nomadic, for those years. They wandered in the wilderness. God led them and fed them, and they worshipped God in a tent. They made a tabernacle as they wandered, and they would lay it out, and it was designed similar to the temple, and that had a Holy of Holies. There was this particular way of making it, which it said that God gave them the wisdom. Certain of the sons of Aaron, of his descendants, it was put into their heart the wisdom to make it the way it should be. And so he dwelt in tents. And in fact, when they wanted to build a temple, the Lord said, look, I've been content to dwell in tents. And there's a sort of symbolic idea behind the tent, is that a tent is not a permanent dwelling. It's something. And there isn't a permanent tent on the whole face of the earth. Tents get set up, then they get packed up and moved. That's the whole point of making it a tent. Otherwise, you make it a house. You know what I mean? It's not meant to be a permanent dwelling. And so it harkens back to the Old Testament. And it also is used symbolically of our incarnation also. Paul refers to the flesh as a tabernacle. It is a place in which we dwell temporarily. That ultimately, this body must be changed into another body. And God, and also our bodies are likened to a temple also, which was, a temple and tabernacle is two things that they are both likened to. And the use of it here I find interesting, the tabernacle of God. The temple, it doesn't say the temple of God is with men. They chose tabernacle. And because I think it harkens back to the more intimate, less like solidly grounded in a place. He has a tabernacle. It's not about the place, a holy place. It's about the holy person that dwells within the tabernacle, which is God. And then the nature of this relationship with man is very different than when we talk about things in the millennium. They will sit down with me in my throne. We will rule them with a rod of iron. There's nobody to rule anymore. As it's written in other places, God will be all in all. At last he will deliver up the kingdom. I should probably... That's a relevant verse here. All right. I'll let you join me in my search because it's boring to just... All right, transition. Okay. Bible collection. Well, that's great. It's not working right. Oh, that's not good. Oh, I think I have to drop this window. Then it comes up. Then I bring up this window, and there we go. All in all. And let's just use the phrase thing, because that's not going to be a very good search unless it's a phrase. Oh, no. Did I spell it right? All right, I'm going to try it again. Did I misspell it? I can't even see. There we go. God which worketh all in all. Sure, after the ultimate thing, after the resurrection. Yeah, I love this one. For he must reign till he hath put... See, look at... Let's go back to... oh boy, I love this chapter. We're going to do 1 Corinthians next. I'm pretty convinced. Though someone recently told me they listened to my Corinthians study for like the 5th time, so I probably did a good job the first time. Maybe I should... I don't know. Where should I move on to something I've never done before? But, maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't... maybe I will. I just get done with Revelation. I feel like I want to do something more conventional. And a lot of people... Whatever. We're not going to discuss that now. Let's do this. Oh, Christ become... Oh, where do I start? Well, let's look at 23. But speaking of the resurrection, As in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. But every man in his order, Christ the firstfruits, afterwards they that are Christ at his coming. Then cometh the end, when he shall have delivered up the kingdom to God. Now he skips right over the millennium, but it's in there, and it's sort of implied that he will establish a kingdom, and then deliver it up to God. Even the Father, when he shall have put down all rule and all authority and power. For he must reign till he have put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. That puts us solidly in the new heavens and the new earth territory, because there shall be no more death. What did it say in Revelation 20 at the end of it? And death and hell were cast in the lake of fire. This is the second death. Death shall be destroyed. That's an interesting thing. Like, is death not going to be... Death isn't going to be destroyed. Death is going to be tormented forever and ever, because that's what the second death is. It's torment forever and ever. In fact, the first death is just either a continuum between suffering or being comforted. Or is it a binary? You're either just totally tortured or totally happy. I think that's actually, why did I say continuum? It's more of a... Well, that's what I was saying about life. Life is basically a continuum. When you're living, when you're feeling good, and when you're being tortured, you're dead. Or whatever. I don't want to go on. I just don't buy it. I think the idea of torment in Revelation 20 is symbolic or metaphorical, or however you want to characterize that. It's not the literal part. The literal part is the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. Now that's a little bit of a poetic statement. Speaking of death as someone who can be... Well, death can be destroyed. You know how it can be destroyed? Just no more dying. No more death. No more sorrow. And that makes sense because Satan was cast in the lake of fire first. Death and hell are cast in the lake of fire. Hell goes in with death, because without death there's no reason for hell. Because, and not that hell's whatever. We covered hell in chapter 20, and so I constantly having to recover that is going to drive me up the wall. For he hath put all things under his feet. I mean, that's already happened by decree. But when he saith all things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted, which did put all things under him. Meaning, God the Father is the exception. The one thing that Christ does not go under Christ's feet is God the Father. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him that hath put all things under him, that God may be all in all. I'm not going to go into the baptized. We're just going to stop there, because I think that's a... If you're curious about that, then see my study on Corinthians, and we will do a study on Corinthians. So, wait, before I put it... Well, the God may be all in all. As a friend of mine used to do interesting reversals of things. So you take a verse and you kind of flip the idea around to make sure you don't misunderstand. It's that God may be all, not that all may be God. You know? And I think so I've had, and because that's a friend of mine used to interpret it that way, and I didn't like it. It's not that all may be God, it's that God may be all. And there's a difference. Obviously, even just the saying of it is God is going to be everything. God is going to be over all, in all. He will be in all of us, over all of us, with all of us, and therefore, that's what it's going to be. Therefore, what that's going to be like, I don't know. What it results in is an eternal state, or an everlasting state, I should say. An everlasting state of no more death, sorrow, crying, or pain. One of the things about eternal torment is it requires an indestructible body, right? The only way you could have no more pain is if you had an indestructible body, a body that couldn't be damaged. Nothing can harm you. Pain is important in this life because without it, we can't see our limits. We have limits. But if we are going to live in a world that's painless, it's fundamentally different than this world. It means we cannot be harmed. No harm can come to us. No damage can be done to us. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you need pain. Because pain is good. It tells you where the sharp edges are of life in general. I mean, I'm using that metaphorically. Where the hot little pokey things are. That's what pain is good for. It also instructs us. But like there is a point to which we come where we have been fully instructed. You know, like whatever men here's the thing. You think, we talk about salvation in terms of the first resurrection. And that's the calling and choosing of God, that we end up there, right? But the cool part is, like I always say, like you come to a wedding, you've got to be ready for the wedding, right? Then you think of like someone like, and I use this as an example because it is manifest in the scriptures. You see the two thieves on the cross, and the one, mocks Christ, and the other one chides that one and says, "Remember me when you enter in your kingdom." And the Lord declares to him that you will be with me in paradise. So, the existence of the millennium means that, like you can have not lived a full life and still be judged ready for the millennium by the Lord Jesus, because his grace and mercy allows it. And maybe you are just on the cusp of that moment that's acceptable for you, where God will bring you into that. But the idea I'm trying to get across is the millennium offers the opportunity for further personal development for those who have been raised in the first resurrection and whom God judges worthy of the wedding, because through their faith in Christ and through whatever his ultimate knowledge has brought about that makes it acceptable. So it offers the possibility, I suppose. I mean, I guess I think of when I think of it, because I'm like, some people, they have faith and they don't get to fully develop as humans. They don't get to live a full life. And it would seem jarring to go from this life to the new heavens and the new earth. What are you going to... Because it's not just a question of, like here's the thing. I want to enter into God's kingdom with agency. You know what I mean? Meaning, people will say, does predestination make you a robot? No, it makes God just an incredible planner. And it makes it, it's mostly because of his omniscience, because he knows everything. Like when he creates things, he can see the perfect consequences of every little piece of the puzzle. And so when he creates me, he knows exactly what the kind of person I'm going to be and what I'm going to be doing. And in so choosing to make me and not somebody else, he is actually determining the future course of the world. You know what I mean? I like when the prophet Isaiah says, about how the Lord has prepared me. He has made me a polished shaft, and his quiver hath he hid me. You know what I mean? It's like, I am like I want to be that weapon. Well, I didn't want to make that sound like boasting, but I am like something in God's hands, like a weapon or a pot or whatever. You want to say, I'm in his hands. He molds me, shapes me, creates me. But the way I perceive the world is not through the lens of God's omniscient knowledge of the future. I don't even know what I am. I don't even really know what I am or who I am. That's how I say I'm looking for that white stone in which the name is written that no one knows but he. I want to receive that. It's like my true and full identity. You know what I mean? I don't know what I'm going to be, and therefore I don't really know who I am. Like when George Washington was 12 years old, he didn't know he was George Washington. I mean, he knew that was his name, but he didn't know who he was going to be. He was going to be the first president of the country and all these things. He'll lead armies. He didn't know who he was going to be. And we have a more beyond this life. In the resurrection, there's another future coming. You know what I mean? There's more future, an immense future. We don't even know what's coming. And it would be good to, and to know who you are. And to be able, because here's the thing, it's like you could, like, the problem I'm grappling with is the idea that I would walk into, let's say I just walked in the kingdom through faith and I had not established any self-control, not established any, or much, let's say, righteousness. I hadn't practiced much patience. I had gotten in by the skin of my teeth, let's say. Then I come to the new heavens and the new earth in that state and have like just all this obedience and perfection just dumped on me. It would seem to be jarring to me. Like it would seem to be like such a metamorphosis of my personality so fast that it would be kind of like wiping me out. I mean, it would be, and in some degree that is true, that we become, the old person has to die and the new person has to be made new in Christ. So maybe it being done all at once. I don't know. I guess I kind of like the idea of because God has ordained to some degree that we must struggle in this. There's given to us on the behalf of Christ not only to believe on him, but to suffer for his name's sake. And when we haven't suffered, there's some aspect of our character development which has not occurred. And I guess it can be given all at once. But in general, it seems that God prefers that we should learn it over time. And certainly, if anyone is short in that department, the millennium could be an opportunity to remedy that, if that is indeed something that ought to be remedied. Because again, a lot of times the purposes of this world are for God raising up his sons. And that's why things happen in the world the way they do. It is the environment in which he is, it's like the incubator in which we are hatching into the new heavens and the new earth. And so all the things that happen in it are happening for a purpose. They're happening for, as it says, all things work together for good for those that love God, for those who are the called according to his purpose. So this new state, he's going to be dwelling with us. We will be his people. God himself shall be with them and be their God. And you may say, well, Jesus was with us. Is he not God himself? Yes, but this means obviously God the Father, or the fullness of God. In the millennium, it's going to be the Lord Jesus. They live and reign with Christ 1,000 years. The Christ is the anointed man. You know what I mean? The incarnate man who was God incarnate, but it is yet that man, that God who has limited himself to that human point. You know what I mean? In becoming Christ, he, what do they call it? In becoming human, he sort of laid aside some aspects of divinity into becoming, becoming human, taking on a human nature, remaining fully divine, but yet, laying aside things which he could, like he said of his life, I lay it down and I can take it up again. He could be killed, but then come back to life, which is an astonishing thing. And so this, when it says God himself shall be with them, this is not just an incarnate man who is God, but God the Father, like God himself, the fullness of God, the God that no man hath seen at any time. The God that is the fullness of God, that we will be prepared to enter into his presence. The tabernacle, God will make his tabernacle with us, and we will coexist in a relationship. We will be his people. He will be our God. In a very up close and personal way. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. It's very intimate. You know what I mean? It's a very intimate thing to wipe someone's tears. It's symbolic of comfort, great comfort. There shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying. You can't have this new heavens and earth operate properly if somewhere in reality most humans are being tortured at God's command, at God's will, and by God's power. To say you can't exist All things are upheld by God's power. All things exist because God exists. Everything is dependent on him. And if such a place were to be real, if a lake of fire was with fire with no light, you know what I mean, because outer darkness, if we were to have fire with no light, or, burning without heat, whatever, I don't know. I know what I'm getting at with that. But whatever, I'll take all the contradictory ideas and say, yes, it's a literal place of torment. It's not like a medieval torture chamber, as they will tell you. It's much worse. Darkness and separation from God, yet somehow intimately connected to existence. Because you must be very intimately connected with existence if you can be burned forever without burning up. And still never grow accustomed to it. And the burning, it's a spiritual feeling. It's like, oh, I'm tormented because I'm separated from God. And I just don't buy it. Like they say, it's a sort of personal anguish. Like they wouldn't just settle down into a meditative state. God made humans to be resilient. If they are, I've talked about this before, if they have the resilience to endure eternal torment, like that, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But there'll be, and also, here's another thing. That is death. You know what I mean? And let me tell you something about the new heavens and the new earth. And we covered it last week. Isaiah 66. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For the worm shall not die, neither shall the fire be quenched. You can't say like that's not somewhere in this picture. That's the eternal torment is the memory of the lake of fire. You know what I mean? They will look upon the carcass of the men who transgressed against him. Whatever that form that takes, that it could be just a monument, whatever. Go forth and look at the bones, so to speak. I mean, I take it somewhat metaphorical, right? I don't think we're going to literally go out and look at their bodies. But, right after the lake of fire, you could potentially, I suppose, do that. I don't know. I don't take that very literally in terms of, I don't think there has to be like a place where all the bodies are just piled up, But what it means is the maintaining of memory. At least that's how I take it, that we will remember. Because who wants to go look at a bunch of unburied bodies? Or moreover, being devoured by, have you ever seen something being eaten by worms? And things that get eaten by worms are always dead. I guess you can start getting worms in you as you're, with gangrene and stuff. The flies come along and lay their eggs on you while you're still alive, and they start eating the rotting flesh. In fact, in some cases, they've used maggots like that for beneficial reasons to eat the putrefying flesh to save what is left alive. But that's really disgusting and disturbing, right? Yeah, it's funny. It's like, I need this. If I don't get rid of this gangrenous thing, it'll spread to my whole body or something. Or I don't know what they use the maggots for, but they do. Just like they found some use for leeches or something. To suck out I forgot what. Bad blood or something. Bruise. Whatever. But anyways, last year I saw a dead animal that had died, and its body was alive with worms. It was just really disturbing. And the flesh was crawling and moving and disgusting. And disturbing. And, that's what that looks like. You really think we're going to go out there for all eternity? God's going to be with us. He's going to make his tabernacle with us. And whenever we go to see him, and the whole idea of going to see him, it's like he's going to be with us all the time. God will be present with us as he is actually present. They say God is everywhere, but we don't see him because he hides himself by not manifesting that powerful, like a powerful, visible form that we could, that our flesh and blood could look at and interact with and observe. But he will be manifested. It means wherever you go, God will be there. He will be all in all. He will be in all things, and all things. He will be everywhere, but perceptibly everywhere. You know what I mean? Like acutely, perceptibly everywhere, and in everything. So you'll have this. You don't need it'll be. It'll be really great, but it will not be. Mundane like in this world. Like you'd have to all right, let's traipse up to the holy city and see God. As Jesus said, the mountain in that is all symbolic ultimately. And the ultimate, and I can tell you it is, because the Lord Jesus in the Gospel of John, he meets the woman at the well. And she says, well, the Jews say that the Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. And Jesus is saying, the hour is coming, and now is when the true worshipers shall worship neither in Jerusalem nor in this mountain. I'm paraphrasing, but this is what he says. They that worship God must worship him in spirit and in truth. Well, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And the places are immaterial. Well, they are material, and therefore, because we're talking about spiritual things, they become imspiritual, which is the ultimate reality. We call it spirit. And to us, spirit is almost something impossible to get a hold of. But it's one of the most powerful forces in the world. You think, like the spirit of the times, that it causes men to move in certain directions. The spirit animates us and makes us alive. And it's an amazing thing. But in this world, it's so easily snuffed out and just evaporates. We can't lay hold on it. But it is one of the most real and powerful things in the universe, is that spirit which gives us life, which ultimately comes from God and is sustained by God. And he is the ultimate spirit of life and is animated by the power that rests within him, the ultimate source of power. I mean, we take machines and we try to invest them with intelligence, and we try to power them up and get more, what would you call it? Increase the computing power to the point where it's like it becomes like an artificial intelligence. But if you think about, if there was enough, if there was like an all-powerful thing, I'm going at an argument that no one's going to care about really, but it becomes, when you get to all-powerfulness, why wouldn't God be conscious? Because some people believe, and I'm sort of touching on people who believe that God, that maybe there's a force out there, you know what I mean? But not that it would be personal and actually concerned with the affairs of men. The fact that we exist means that that force cares about us, and also it's like having to learn from being conscious in a person how just radically great it is to be something, and not just someone, and not just something. When I said something, I meant like, the something that I am. What is that? I'm someone. God is someone. He's not just a power, but a person. Not a human being, but a personal being. He has a substantive, conscious being that he is. He will wipe away all the tears from our eyes. There's no more death, no sorrow, nor crying. Neither shall there be any more pain. I don't know how you slip in. Except for the pile of people where their worm shall not die and their fire shall not be quenched. I mean, Jesus identified that as Gehenna, which is just outside the holy city, right? We don't need to go to the holy city to worship God. God will be all in all. We will worship him in spirit. He will be with us in spirit, wherever we happen to be. If you have a lake of fire with people being tortured, and you can go out and observe that in the new heavens and the new earth, as Isaiah 66 says, how can you say that that's not torment? Well, Paul, again, they're carcasses. It's not a, they're not, that passage doesn't even say in Isaiah 66 that anyone's being tortured. What it's saying is we go out and observe them. We go out and examine them. And that is the meaning of the torment. It is about examination, harsh examination, judged harshly forever, examined harshly forever. That's what it means. It doesn't mean they're going to personally experience this examination. We're done with them. They're done. And you could say, and this is a good argument, Paul, well, hey, look, I don't believe in eternal torment either. But how do you justify most people that ever existed even dying? Like, what? That's so wasteful. I hear people say all the time, like, look at the history of the earth and say it's so wasteful. All that life wasted, all those, creatures wasted. Understand that all the things that exist in the world are created to waste away and wax old and die. Right? Fundamentally, even if every person who ever lived was to inherit the new heavens and the new earth and enter into life eternal, like the people who believe, and there are people who believe this, Christians. In fact, there have been some books popularized. What was it called? Love Wins, I think it was called. Love Wins. It's they call it universal reconciliation. The problem with universal reconciliation is it's not universal. It's not universal. And I've made this argument over and over again. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it is a death blow to that very idea. Because there is no practical limit on the number of humans that could exist. And people don't like to consider, and some people have trouble with this thought. If my wife and I had conceived children like a month later than we did, we would have all different children. We'd have 8 different people. And you know what? And we'd love them just as much as the ones we got. And if you think about it, like saying, if you like your kids, because some people don't, and they don't like to admit it, but they hate their children. I mean, they do, because they've raised them to be hateful to them. They've allowed them to become, intolerable little monsters. And I've been asked again by people to continue the Patriarch series. I'm thinking about making a totally different channel for that, honestly, and I will, when I do that, there'll be you will know about it. Just because I think it's such a different character in nature, it's like it should be a different thing. Okay. But you think about that, like think about your children, and now you just have 8 different children. Now because you know about the ones that you have now, if you like them again. When I think about my kids and like what if they didn't exist? It's like horrific, terrible. You know what I mean? Or if I had married someone else, I'd have totally different children. I mean, it's like, but I know about these, and so the thought of them not existing bothers me. And you could say, well, that can't be because everything just is the way it is and it proceeds. That's true, but it exists in potential. You know what I mean? It exists in potential. I could have had not just 8 children, maybe 16. Maybe I could have had all those kids. But then what if I had, then instead of a month later, we had conceived a month earlier? There's another set of human beings that would exist. Totally different. What if by some fluke that they all had been twins? Then because you can make twins and get 2 different individual people. It's more, your life is more than DNA. Obviously, if it was just DNA, they'd share a consciousness, and they do get awfully close to that, from what I understand. Like not to a shared consciousness, but to Twins growing up in isolation have very similar things. Their life outcomes end up being often very similar. It's been studied. I haven't studied that myself, but it'd probably be something I would be interested in, since that is something I talk about a lot. Because I think it is a very important issue that, if you talk about, I use that parable of the worker's wages. It's something I hammer home all the time, right? That God is fair. No, God is not fair. God is gracious. Sorry. God is not fair. God is gracious. But in that parable, he is fair to one group of people, right? The people who worked all day and they just got a penny. And I said, ultimately, in reality, God is gracious to all men, and that he gives us life. So I would, for a moment, just suggest, what if we thought of in that parable, and I'm probably going to start to do this because it makes sense to me, and I think it's a good way to look at it, that the first group that works all day were never born. Okay? Why do I say that? Because God is completely fair to them. He is not gracious at all with them. I mean, you could say in the parable that he was gracious in hiring them to begin with. They served his purposes. And I do think that is how it is meant. I mean, I'm not changing the interpretation of the parable. I'm just saying, imagine for a moment that first group that got nothing extra from God, no grace at all, just what they deserved, is people who were never born. People who never got conceived. You know why? Because God doesn't owe you a living. He doesn't owe my twin a living. He doesn't owe my fourth brother a living, because I have two, I should say third brother. We are three brothers. One is not, but there were three, my older brother, me, my younger brother, right? And I have two older sisters, right? But I don't have there's no fourth brother. There were only three. But there could have been. My mother and father even talked about they had considered having another child, but they didn't. You know what I mean? But if they had, they would have loved that child. I would have loved that child. Maybe that child would have been spectacular. When I got, I've had a lot of children, and I like them all, and I love them all. I say like them all because that to me is more powerful. A lot of times people love their kids, quote unquote, but they do not like them very much. And that becomes very obvious because of the way they talk about them and the way they interact with them. You can tell the parent and the child does not like each other. They don't have that, I have adult children, and throughout their teen years, though, I get along with them. We have very collegial relations as adults, meaning I feel like we have good relations, friend relations. We talk. There's no weird resentful, if you've had a bad relationship with a parent, you know what it's like. Or if you had a bad relationship with a kid, there's that sort of sullen, resentful, there's exuding, did I say exuding? I meant exuding of ill will and feelings of one to the other. You can see that sometimes. I know I experienced it. But point is on that, and there's no problem dwelling on it, because we have these people that have never existed. Why does existence, why does the fact that you got blessed to live for a moment in this world, why does that give you preferential treatment, that you, despite all what you did with that world and in that world, despite the fact that given life, you squandered it in sinful living, in wickedness, and not turning to the living God, not seeking him, you squandered your life. Why prejudicially should God then have some obligation to reach out to you through the millennium or whatever to bring you into his new heavens and the new earth over someone who had never even had an opportunity to live? You know what I mean? My other 8 children, my other brother, who, right now in my body It exists the potential for all kinds of kids. But I'm probably not going to have any more kids. I mean, I'm coming up on 50, and so is my wife. It's like, I had 8. There was that show, 8 is enough. I'm just saying, I'm just probably not going to happen. It just comes a time when it's probably not going to happen. We're not going to do it. So, but we could. Maybe, someone said, oh, you bring a retarded kid into the world. Well, then you'll be saddled with that the rest of your life. I know. Or not. Maybe we won't. I'm not. I don't decide on these things because it's sort of like the Lord. I just see what happens, but it's probably a big no. But the fact that is, people, and I'm not talking about abortion and stuff like that. They've lived. They've lived. And they've already been blessed to even have their heartbeat for a moment. Don't you doubt it. It's a blessing. It's very small. It's not minor. But when your heart beats for a while and then you die, that's ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That seems pretty well even and fair to me. I mean, I know what's not fair is that I got to live such a long life. I lived it in relative wealth. You know what I mean? In relative health. I'm not the healthiest person. I'm not the wealthiest person. By any means. But relatively so, what I have had is a whole ton of happiness and contentment in my marriage, which most people don't have. And also I've been very pleased with the outcomes with my children, which a lot of people don't have. So those are very powerful blessings. I would trade that over wealth and, perfect health. The amount of health and wealth I have are perfectly suited to me. I have no complaints. I mean, I would not want greater health or greater wealth if it meant the suffering of any of those two things, the two most important things in my life, my relationship with my wife, in my life after God, of course, under God, relationship with my wife and with my children, the most important earthly things I have in that regard, and the rest of my family, of course. Children and family I put in the same category, honestly. Or at the same level, let's say. And at the same level as my closest family members, which are small in number. Okay, no more death, neither sorrow nor crying. I think children are special in a way because of because you're so responsible for them, So maybe I haven't categorized those things properly. It's all right. Former things have passed away. Okay, so why does if everything dies, it's possible for this to happen. It's possible. I know because in this world we do it all the time. Things die. We sorrow and we get over it. You know what I mean? Say, how, you can ask the question, hey, and they have to answer it, and they do. And more, I respect them for attempting to answer the question. How will I be able to enjoy eternity with God if I know, like some loved one, someone who I loved, who did not love the Lord, is suffering eternally in the lake of fire? And we know about this. Here's the thing. Even if you want to say, well, hell is far away from where God is. Okay, well, in the Bible it says it's right there. Right there. We will go out from the presence of God to look on the carcasses. I mean, because it must be tormented forever and ever. It must be examined forever and ever, because that's what it means. We have to examine these things. We have to think about them for all eternity. We will. So it's not going to be you will forget about it. And they didn't say that. They said just that their suffering you will sympathize with why God had to make them suffer. That you will be more sympathetic with God's need to punish them than you will be with their suffering. That's essentially the argument. And okay. And that's a little magical, right? It's like, well, we can't understand it now. but we will understand it then. That's my answer is a little different, because what I would say is from my position, the question would come to me like this: Paul, how can I enjoy eternal life forever with God, knowing that my family members who did not trust Christ died and couldn't inherit this, and they are dead forever? They're never coming back. And I would say that this verse, God's going to wipe away your tears. That, yes, like the people who believe in eternal torment, there is a little magic that God works, but you can see a hint of it even now. In that, my grandmother died. I loved her, but I don't sorrow her passing every single day. You know what I mean? And also, having access to God and His knowledge, God being all in all, we probably will understand a little better why it is some people were not fitted for everlasting life. And I'm not saying anything about I'm not saying about any particular relation of mine. Certainly, I'm not, because it's like all the people in my family believe in God. They believe in the Lord Jesus specifically, and the degree, and I can't peer into their hearts. And the apostasy didn't come to reveal whether they were faithful or not. So I don't know. I can't judge them. They died in faith, so far as I know, at least outwardly. So I don't judge those who died in faith. I'm just saying they're passed away in this world, and you get used to them not being around. And I would say also, the same way that you do not mourn the non-existence, well, some people do. I'll tell you what, some people don't have any children. There are women who maybe, because of the way the world is, they tell women, go pursue your career. It's the most important thing, to have a career and to do something and be something in life. Motherhood is old-fashioned. It's oppressive. And you don't want to have anything to do with that. Whatever you do, don't get married too soon, and don't get pregnant. If you get married, go to work. This is what will fulfill you. Usually they just go to work without getting married, or they go to work, they get divorced because the relationship can't abide this separation all the time. And when you work away from home, you're more intimate with the people you work with every day. They're your friends, they're your colleagues. We got a couple of minutes. So you can imagine that, like, in the fact that I don't lament the children I didn't have. I know my sons and daughter that live now, right? And if they were to pass away, I would mourn their passing. Like if any of them died while I was alive, I would be stricken. Most parents say they could not endure that, but many do. And they're very sorrowful, and it's a very painful thing. But if I had done this, like I said, it's like if the moment they were conceived was interrupted, and then so another child was conceived a month later. I use the month because it's very clear there'd be a different egg, because it's once that each one of them is unique. Each egg of the woman produces unique. There are women not having children going in late into life. I want to finish that story about that though. But then the one I know would be gone, and then what if I never knew a son like the ones I have now? I'd never known them. I wouldn't be like, oh, they're gone. Like I'm saying, the sons I didn't have though, I don't know enough about them to mourn them. I could try to create them in my mind. I can look at my children, I can imagine like another one like that. When you have 8, you can start seeing the patterns. And it's there is the like life's lottery. And they said, they talk about rich people being born rich as being winners of life's lottery. No, everyone that is conceived is a winner of life's lottery. And so you are immensely privileged above all kinds of potential. But there are women who, because of the way the world works, they delay having children, and then they may never have children. And all those eggs, all those potentials passing away, all the men they pass up that they don't marry, their sweetheart they abandoned from youth, everything passes away. and there's nothing. They produce nothing. And they do mourn often that they never had anything. But they don't even get to see what could have been. Every month, a potential human was just missed. Every month, a woman menstruates, a possibility for a new human comes along. And more often than not, because you think about it, in a lifetime, how many times is that going to happen? Well, every month for 10 years would be 100 times. So it's more than 10 years. It's going to be hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. Hundreds of human beings each woman is capable of bringing forth. Not to mention all the other distinct possibilities. Mind-bending. So, the old earth is going to pass away. We will not lament that which has not been. We will not lament that which has passed away. God will comfort us. We will not sorrow over it. We will not cry over it. It will pass away and be not quite forgotten. God doesn't say we will forget. I mean, except metaphorically, maybe. We will forget about the past. But the past still exists in our minds. You don't have it present on your mind all the time. But the Isaiah 66 passage makes it clear. We will go forth and look upon the carcass of what was. If only in the spirit. If only in the mind. If only in reconsideration. And that is the torment, which means to me, which implies, it's literally torment, but implies examination, harsh examination of the past. We will examine and judge harshly the things which were, the things which pass away. And so, we will begin with verse 5 next time. There was a lot of time on a couple of verses, but they are some power-packed verses, and who can blame me for spending a whole hour talking about such things? I could spend the whole day talking about these things. I can hear people saying, I know. So thanks for joining me this study. Look forward to studying with you again tomorrow. And here's Isaiah, Revelation 21.
Adorned for her husband, and I heard a great voice out of heaven say, bring it home.